G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle. Quick little episode today. I often see in the comments section on Battlefleet Gothic videos people talking about the difference in style between the Chaos cruisers and the Imperial cruisers. Now, of course, the natural reason for this is that you need to tell the two fleets apart. But the big changes and how they work in the fluff essentially boils down to them originally being the same back in 30k and over time diverging. So Chaos, the sort of style of fleet that Abaddon has, is really just a facsimile of what exists in the Horus Heresy, whereas Imperials is the one that's diverged away and evolved over time. Now we say evolved, but it's really a sidestep, and I'm using a 3D sketching program here in order to actually show you these particular ships. So hopefully this all shows up nicely in the video. And these 3D models were not created by me. These two in particular were created by Italian Moose on Thingiverse. And I've just essentially slapped some of the components together in order to demonstrate the points in the video. But let's get into it. So in the fluff, the old Chaos cruisers, which is this design in the back, this bad boy back here, these components now highlighted in blue. The Chaos cruisers were the original forebears, and the Chaos cruisers were renowned for higher speeds, more firepower in the form of their lances, so very sophisticated lance batteries, which are essentially gigantic las cannons, and they also were a bit lighter on armour compared to what would come later on. The Imperial cruisers, on the other hand, which is this bad boy up the front here, these are sort of the opposite of that. They're slower, they're more bulky, more ponderous, and the reason why is because of, well, the Horus Heresy. So, originally the Chaos cruisers were everywhere. At the start of the Heresy, though, they had started to see this. This is the prow, the torpedo armament on a cruiser. And prow torpedoes is what they call the armoured prow. This became standard on all Imperial cruisers and many Chaos cruisers after Horus Heresy, but it was just being introduced at about that time. And essentially, imagine a Chaos frigate, cruiser, or battleship, but with the Imperial style prow slapped on. Such a thing does exist. And it looks a little bit weird to your eye. And the reason it looks weird to your eye is because, well, we're so used to seeing one design or the other. There was a bunch of steps in between the two. So, for example, the Imperials lost, thanks to the Heresy, that really, really high-end ability to create lances. They can still build lances, and they still have a lot of existing ones in service. They don't know how to make the really high-quality lances that the Chaos had, because they lost the Forge World responsible for that. And so, because of that, say the giant power units and the giant engines that Chaos ships had, which again, you can see the Chaos has a much wider, flatter profile on the arse end of the ship where their engines go, compared to the Imperials, whose engines I haven't even put on, but you can see where the large flat surface where they would normally live, as opposed to the Chaos ship, which has its engines all built into the rear. Now the Chaos ships, with their efficient, more powerful engines, required obviously more energy, larger generators, more heat sinks and radiators to dissipate them, as well as the lance batteries that they supplied. But with these things gone from the ships, well, they basically shrunk down the area. So the Chaos rear end, which is nice and wide and flat, well, as you can see just by looking at it, it's really not that different to the Imperial rear end if you look at the side-on profile, or even the end-on profile. It's just wider. And I would hypothesize, because I'm not the game developer and I can't guarantee this, but essentially the extra power generation and the heat sinks was in the wide flat areas that made up the rear of the ship. And with these gone, that there's actually, well, with no need to have them, or with them not being built in, there's no need to waste the mass of the vessel constructing that particular area. So essentially they just removed it from the ship, and any sensors or weaponry that was mounted in the spot, such as defensive turrets, has simply been moved to these these small little wings just on the edges of the Imperial vessels. So that's a very, very simple hypothesis to make, I think. Easy concept to come to. When it comes to the weapon batteries themselves, Chaos ships obviously had these large flat surfaces that very much mirrored the shape of the rear profile, whereas the Imperials have these very slab-sided hulls. I would say that this is partly because with Imperial design, they are going in with a lot of weapons batteries, so they need this side-mounted firepower, and it's got to be able to hit sort of higher and lower planes when it comes to three-dimensional combat. Whereas Chaos didn't have so much of a problem with this because they had so many lance turrets that could actually move themselves in these various planes. So when we get to our Chaos cruiser, I've retrofitted this one with Imperial weapons batteries. Now, very crudely, mind you, but just for the purposes of the video. And you can see the sort of angle they have to sit on. They naturally sort of have to sit into this angle in order to fit into the space available. Now, if you want to make it slab-sided, well then, all of a sudden, in order to fit them in correctly, so that they can get better angles and better approaches in order to fire more to the southern areas, as if you're firing down in this direction towards an enemy ship located out in the bottom towards the grid pattern, then you would need to have them on a more vertical orientation in regard to the side of the ship. So it's a natural evolution to go from one to the other. Because again, losing all that formidable multi-directional firepower that the lance turrets, these high-powered Chaos, old-school tech lance turrets provided, means you have no choice. And then of course you're taking sections like, well, this prow here, and you're then taking that prow and you're replacing the Chaos pointy prow, which is relatively unarmoured, has weapons, has lances, torpedoes, that kind of thing, and you're replacing it with that ram bow that can really take a hit. And that's how, essentially, you get from the ships of Chaos and the Horus Heresy to the ships of the Imperium in 40k. You have a logical set of design changes in my mind, and again, this is partially borne out in the books by saying that things like the Imperial prow was a retrofit and the loss of the lance technology, and just I'm extrapolating the reasons in between to come up with a logical answer. So anyway, short, sharp, sweet little video. I'm very much on the Battlefleet Gothic train. I've spoken about it in several videos lately. And if you go right back to some of the earliest videos, I said it's the specialist game that I loved the most. That and Mordheim. I have a Battlefleet Gothic fleet. I am even at the point of now adding and converting up my own Gloriana. And I'm also on the latest episode of Race for Impact, which is yet to release, and we spend a good 2 hours or so talking about Gloriana battleships in that, and rules which I wrote up for them. Now, if people are curious about it, well, I'll chuck them in at the end of the video here, so you can have a quick read through with what I've got so far. And obviously it's not Games Workshop affiliated or anything like that. I have no say over the rights, but if you do play Battlefleet Gothic, and you understand what the rules mean, try them out, have a go, see if you like them. Anyway, back with the Outer Circle, thank you all for watching the episode, and see you all next time.